So as I said, Irene, I'm going to ask you a series of open-ended questions. They're very gentle questions. They will slowly take you through your life, and they will be a guide for me, and we're going to end up having a conversation. And at the end of the conversation, I will have a beautiful DVD for you and your family.
Thank you.
So, okay, so let's get started, all right?
Yes.
So first of all, I really want to thank you for your willingness to do this. Sarah Mattis told me you were going to be the person for today, and she described you a little bit to me, and I am just absolutely thrilled to meet you. You are described in such vibrant terms by everyone who knows you here, that for me to be able to meet you today, I'm thrilled by that. So thank you very much for your willingness to do this.
It's my pleasure.
So, Irene, when and where were you born?
Well, I was born in a small town 13 miles east from Pittsburgh, a little steel town, Duquesne, Pennsylvania. And my father was a steel mill worker.
Oh. And what year were you born?
I was born in 1918.
1918. So you were born in Duquesne, Pennsylvania. Is that where you grew
Yes,
up?
I grew up, yes.
So tell me about Duquesne. What was it like there?
Well, most of the men worked in a steel mill, and there was, of course, all these different ethnic people, and we had a variety of friends, all kinds of different nationalities, and we just got along beautifully. And of course, that coincided with the Depression when I was growing up.
Right.
So I went to Duquesne High School, which I graduated from, and then tried to get a job.
Bet you that was it challenging?
But it was there was just no work to be had. I applied at a 5 and 10, Woolworth's 5 and 10 cent store, and they told me what the job would entail. It was very low wage, I think 25 cents an hour.
Oh my goodness.
I had to take a streetcar to the next town, and then if I would come to work, appeared at the site, and they didn't need me. We don't need you today. I had to take a streetcar back. Had to bring my own lunch, and there was nothing else to do. I just had a high school education. I wanted to do something interesting, so I took a job with a nice Jewish family.
You did?
As a housemaid.
How resourceful of you.
And it was a huge English two-door house. And they had an elderly grandmother and a 12-year-old daughter. And they were lovely people. And when I walked I took the job sight unseen for $6 a week. And I didn't know what...
Was the job right in Duquesne, right where you lived?
No, it was in the next town.
Oh, okay.
It was across the river. I had to cross the bridge. We always walked, but if you wanted to get there in a hurry, you had to take a streetcar, walk about a mile to the streetcar, and then take a streetcar across the Monongahela River.
Wow.
And then go up a hill to this nice residential section. So I didn't know what the house looked like. I was thrilled to have a job.
I'm sure.
$6 a week seemed like a lot of money because my parents needed the money. So I took the job, and I walked over with my little bundle of clothes under my arms. I walked into the kitchen, and she put me to work right away.
Wow.
Wow. So it was a huge house, but I liked it. I had my own room.
So you actually lived there?
I was a live-in maid, yes.
Did you live there the entire week, or could you go home?
I could go home on a week. Every second week I was permitted to go home. And truly, it was, I would say I was overworked. I mean, she really took advantage of me. I was a young girl. I was very willing, and I was used to housework because we had a large family. I'm one of 8 children, and I was the oldest. I was the second. And of course, all the housework and babysitting and helping my mother with the laundry and the garden, that was part of my life. But I didn't realize that it was work. I was happy to do it.
Right. And you were grateful to have the job.
I was so happy to have the job.
Well, now you said that you felt that they took advantage of you because you were. How did you handle that? Did you?
I just did what they told me.
Okay.
I never said no.
Mm-hmm.
It was Irene this and Irene that, and all day long Irene this. And then Mrs. Klein would go away in the afternoon. She'd go play mahjong or she'd go shopping to Pittsburgh, and I would be home. And then after I was there a year, she had another child.
Oh.
So then I had an additional job. I was also a nanny
Oh my goodness.
to that baby, plus all my housework. We did have a laundress come in,
Mm-hmm.
and she did the washing and most of the ironing, and then I did the rest of the ironing that she didn't have a chance to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was completely happy because we had a wonderful Carnegie Free Library right across the street.
From the house.
Yes,
Oh.
right across the street. And of course, I don't know what made me do it, but I felt that I had to get permission. Can I go to the library and read?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I developed a love of reading.
So you were already developing this positive, resourceful, make the best of a
I
situation.
took advantage of every situation that I could. I already knew how to do housework. I was a wonderful ironer at the age of 18. I was 18 years old, by the way. I ironed beautifully. I knew how to do housework. I knew how to clean. I knew how to obey, do as I'm told.
I'm sure you were respectful.
Very, extremely respectful. And we got along beautifully. Beautifully.
Wow. How long did you work there?
I worked there 6 years. 6 years.
Were they sorry to see you go?
They were, because at the end of 6 years, the war, it was 1941.
Right.
And my husband, my then boyfriend, I met my husband to be at the library,
Oh,
by
you
the
did?
way. He was always read when I was there. He was always there when I was there.
I wonder if he knew you were going to come then and he came at the same time.
I caught him looking at me a lot of times. And one day he came and sat at my table with his books.
Oh, he did.
And we started a conversation.
Ah.
And the rest is history.
Ah.
And our dates consisted of going for a walk in the evening.
How romantic.
After dinner, after the baby was put to bed, and after everything was put away and cleaned up, we went for a little walk for about an hour or two every evening around the neighborhood. And then we would meet in the library and read together and then say goodbye.
Aw.
And then I finally introduced him to my parents, and then he would come to my house to Duquesne. He was from McKeesport, where I worked. He was in the town where I worked. He lived. And then it was love at first sight.
Was
and
it?
He's the only person I ever dated, and he's the only person that I ever wanted to talk to or meet or even date.
Well, I really want to hear more about that. I really want to hear more about the love at first sight. So let's hold that for a second because I want to get to that point. But I want to go back and ask you to give a little bit more clarification. And you said there were 8 children in your family?
Yes.
Tell me about your childhood with 8 children. What was that like?
Well, we were crowded. We lived in a story-and-a-half bungalow. My father built a little room in the basement for 2 boys. They had little beds there and a little dresser. Warm, very nice, very clean. And that made room for the rest of the family upstairs. And the girls all slept together in one room and the boys in another.
So how many girls were there?
There were 3 girls and 5 boys.
So the 3 girls included you?
Yes.
3 girls and 5 boys.
I was the oldest, yes.
You were the oldest.
Yes.
So you were crowded, but you began to describe it as a very positive, warm environment.
Oh, our house was spotless. because I had to clean it every day.
Yeah.
Well, the girls had to clean. The boys went out and earned their pennies in their spare time. We all went to school, and my mother even had a child after I was working at my job. I was ready to become engaged, and my mother had a child at 47.
Oh my goodness,
That was
God
her
bless her,
last
huh?
child. Yeah, so we kind of put off my marriage because I wanted to. All my money, of course, went to my mother. Sometimes I didn't even see the money. My brother would come over and get it and take, because my mother needed it.
So tell me what it's like growing up in such a large family with so many children.
Well, it was wonderful. I mean, we all helped one another. Well, we took care of one another while my mother worked in the garden, and we worked side by side. I helped her bake. I helped her can the goods. We had a large yard, and it wasn't grass, it was all garden. We had an organic garden.
Oh my goodness.
We had a little corner where we had chickens.
Wow.
We had fresh eggs, chicken every Sunday, fresh vegetables galore.
Wow.
My brother would go out to the woods and bring home a sack of apples on his back from the woods, you know, trees growing in the woods.
What a resourceful family. Did you realize at that time how resourceful you were and how positive you were?
We really had to work. We really had to do everything in our power to survive.
Right.
Because we saw there was no money to be had.
Right.
Any money we had, my brother would go out and earn Saturday night for the church offering. Because we had to go to church, Sunday school first, and then after Sunday school we went right upstairs and went to church services. And our parents came, and then we all went home. Walked. There were no cars. This was 1936. I graduated from high school in 1936. So we didn't think we were poor.
Right.
Nobody had any money.
Right.
We were all in the same boat.
I bet you thought you were blessed too, how lucky you all were to have each other and...
Well, we had a good mother.
Yeah.
Our parents were wonderful. My mother was a wonderful cook. She taught me how to cook. We cooked side by side since I was 5 years old. My father made me a little stool, and I stood by the stove, and I would stir and make the roux. When do I put the water in, Mom? Well, when the flour's nice and brown, you put it in little by little and stir, and that's how I learned how to cook.
And what pleasant memories.
Beautiful memories.
What do you remember most about your father, Irene? Talk to me
My
about...
father was a very hard-working man, but of course he was out of work for 9 years, and at that time there was no kind of help. There was no food stamps. Nobody could help you.
Right.
Nothing. You were on your own. You had to go out and grow your food, or do something to survive. So he would find jobs painting people's houses, $1 a day, digging basements, working in the yard, putting up fences, tending their chickens, and he would find work. And we had a little house which we brought through my father worked for the Carnegie Steel Company, and of course you could buy a home through the Carnegie Land Company. So we had a mortgage, and that was put on hold. We didn't have to pay anything on our mortgage.
Oh, that was
But in
good.
the meantime, the taxes accumulated,
Right.
you know. So after the Depression was over, they finally paid the back taxes and started to pay the mortgage off, and paid their little mortgage off on this little house.
Determined,
Everybody
persevering.
worked very hard, from the smallest to the oldest.
Now, when you think back on your dad, how would you say he influenced you the most? What gifts did he give you as a father that you carried with you as a young woman through your life?
Well, we had to be obedient. We had to obey. There was no such thing as saying no or refusing to do anything that you were told. We went to Sunday school in the morning, and in the afternoon there was Bible class in the afternoon. and my mother knew we were safe, and that was our social life.
Mm-hmm.
The school dances I could never go to because I never had a nice enough dress.
Mm.
And what influenced was me, that we knew that we were in a tough spot,
Mm-hmm.
and that it would not last forever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's just endurance.
So your father taught you the value of endurance and perseverance.
And be thrifty, clean up. Well, we always cleaned our plates up. There
Right.
was no such thing as leaving food on your plate.
Right.
In fact, we looked around for more. It was so good.
Yeah.
Everything was so good.
Mhm.
My mother cooked and baked beautifully. We had wonderful meals. And she made huge pots, of things.
Yeah.
And we baked her own bread, ate loaves at a time in great big commercial loaves,
Yeah.
So we just didn't know that we were poor because everybody was
In the
like
same
that.
boat.
Everybody.
Now you described so much about your mom. What do you remember most about her presence and who she was as a woman? What do you remember most about
She
her?
was very kind.
Mhm.
She would help people that needed help.
Mhm.
And although we had just enough for us, she would always find it in her heart to send me down with a basket for another needy family or a needier relative. And I would always take every week, this basket of fresh vegetables
Mhm.
and a chicken and some eggs. And she did it so gladly and willingly, never expected anything in return.
She was so gracious.
Yes.
So what words, when I say to you, when you think back on your beautiful mom, how did she influence you the most? What did you carry with you that she role modeled for you?
What did I carry with me? Well, she taught me honesty.
She was kind.
She was very kind, very gracious.
Mm-hmm.
She was just a good person, and I wanted to be like her.
So she was a really positive role model for
She
you.
was. She would always say, "Well, things have to get better. I mean, this can't go on forever.
Right.
This has to end someday."
Right.
And it did.
Right.
Gradually, it did.
So she really had a very positive, resilient attitude about her.
That's the word, resilience. Yes. Yes.
Now your brothers and sisters, all right, so there were 8 of you all together. You said there were 3 girls and 5 boys. And it was a wonderful, you helped each other, you supported one another, you all worked together. You said you were the oldest?
I was the second to the oldest.
Second
I
to-
was the oldest daughter.
What was it like being the oldest daughter in a family of 8? What was that role
Well, I
like
had
for you?
great responsibility. If my mother needed one thing, and we couldn't, it wasn't growing in a garden, I would have to walk a couple miles to the A&P, and I loved it. It was getting away from the house. It was walking. It was meeting somebody on the street, and
You knew she trusted you enough to send you with that?
absolutely. Oh, and my father would say when he would send us on an errand, "Now you better do it right, or else," he said, you're going to have to go back
Yeah.
and fix it. So
Yeah.
we made sure that we did the errand correctly and did everything the way he told us.
So being the oldest daughter gave you a role of responsibility and you embraced it.
Oh, absolutely.
And you
I
love
was
that role.
extremely responsible. Yes.
How do you think you influence your younger siblings?
Well, we were all just about the same. We followed the pattern, you know. We knew we had to do certain things to survive. And we had fun. We had our moments when we went out to play hopscotch and roast our potatoes over the hill. There was a big hill there. We made a fire or took our potatoes and roasted our potatoes. And we played our games and we sang songs. And we had no toys. We made our own balls and our own bats out of trees,
Right.
And there was absolutely no luxuries in our life.
But
No
the-
luxury.
but-
We got hand-me-down clothes, which
Right.
we were grateful for, from our relatives and different people. It was just the norm. Everybody did
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Every family did that.
So you were all in it together, weren't you?
We were all in it together.
When you look back to yourself as a little girl, how would you describe yourself as a child?
Well, I don't think I had enough of a social life, except the church part. That was my social life, and the neighboring girls. Other than that, we never went to camp. We didn't have bicycles. We didn't learn how to swim. We used to roller skate on the sidewalk if we were able to get a pair of used skates somewhere. Maybe we would skate with one skate only and share the other, you know.
Yeah.
But that was our fun.
So even back then, you were positive, resourceful, and grateful
Yes.
for what you had.
Yes.
Did
yeah.
you realize it back then?
No.
No.
We did not realize it back then.
You didn't realize the wonderful values that were growing
No.
inside of you.
But you know, after I married and I had children, and it was a little tough because, of course, when we married, my husband went to the service right away. He had to go into the service, and incidentally, he took a job in Washington D.C. when I was still working in McKeesport at my job.
Was this before you were married?
This is before we were married. He was out of high school, and also he worked for the Bell Telephone Company. And then that job dissolved somehow, and he was looking for work, and he saw an ad in the post office. A Signal Corps needed employees, so he took went to Pittsburgh, took an exam. He passed the exam, and off to Washington, D.C. he went.
Oh my goodness.
So Mrs. Klein said to me, well, now I wonder how long it's going to be before you get married, because she knew that he would miss me and I would miss him. So sure enough, he went in the summer, and he came home one weekend, and he said, how about if we get married and you come to Washington, D.C. with
And so
me?"
you did.
So he came home from Washington, D.C. on Christmas weekend. He had got a day off. We were married at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The minister made a little, he bent a little and said, well, it's 4 o'clock and there's a war going on. He didn't want to marry us on a Christmas, you know. So we just I was in a nice dress, and we were married, and we took the midnight train to Washington, D.C.
That night.
Yeah, that night.
And then you
And-
moved in with him then.
Well, he had a furnished room, and like all government employees that came from all over the United States to work for the government, because all the men were in the service, so they took a lot of women, you know, employed a lot of women. So I started looking around for a job, and I heard through the grapevine that FBI is looking for people.
Oh,
So in the meantime, I took a job in a drugstore at the soda fountain, a walking distance from our little room. So I worked there, and I took a test. I passed the test
for the FBI.
for the FBI, and they told me, well, you have to be investigated first before we can make a decision. So it took 2 months to investigate me, and lo and behold, I got a telephone call. You are to report for work.
How exciting.
Yes, so I reported for work on the midnight. You had to start with a midnight shift. You had to work from 11 to 7. Because, you know, they worked around the clock, the FBI. They had tons of work investigating to do during the war. So I was first I was a file clerk, and then I was promoted to fingerprint analyst.
Oh.
So it took 6 weeks of training, and I loved it.
Now what do you do? Tell me about being a fingerprint
Fingerprint
analyst.
analyst, there's 4 girls at a table. We all had our little microscopes, our powerful little microscopes, and our pile of fingerprints, 2 sheets, left hand, right hand, and we focused our little microscope on each finger and counted the whorls and the loops and made like a little ratio, how many loops and how many whirls in each finger, and put the number down on the bottom, and we had to do so many a day, you know, you had to have a quota. And I like doing it.
So what did they use that information for?
Well, for jobs, you know, security. They had to, anybody that went to the service had to be fingerprinted, and anybody that took a government job, any job, because, and that's where the spies were tried. While we were in that building, the spies that were caught off the New England, rather than the New Jersey coast, they were being tried in the building there while we were working. We weren't allowed to use the elevators. We had to use the steps, and nobody could talk. It was complete silence.
Wow.
And they were tried right at the FBI building.
What a wonderful
6 were
opportunity.
put to death, and 1 got a life sentence.
Wow.
Yes. So that was a interesting history.
Oh, I'll say.
And I loved Washington, D.C.
Did you?
It was warm in the winter. It was pleasant. It was busy. There were people from all over the United States working. And it was, you know, we ate
It was an exciting place. It was a high energy
very
place.
exciting. And we worked 5 days a week at the start, and then when things got the war got in deeper and deeper, we had to work 6 days a week. So on that 7th day, we bought a pass and went all over, just roamed everywhere. You know. We spent the entire Sunday, our day off, outside out of doors.
This is such an exciting time of your life, and when you talk about it, your face just lights up.
Well,
It was just wonderful.
That was my honeymoon.
Oh, yeah.
That was our honeymoon, and it was a perfect honeymoon.
Oh,
because
bet.
it was new to me.
Yeah.
And we got out of a little steel town, and we got to a place where there were intelligent people, all kinds of different ethnic groups, and we were all happy to be
Your
there.
whole world opened up for you, didn't it?
My world, and after being for 6 years in a house working for people and being really closed in a house all week long and having a half a day off on the weekend, that was a wonderful thing for me. I just asked him before we were married, just take me away from Duquesne. I want to get away from here.
Yeah.
I need to get out. I need to go.
Yeah.
And this is what happened.
Wow.
So my dream came true.
Wow.
And I liked it very much. And of course the war was getting worse and worse, and he kept getting deferments one right after another. And he worked for the Signal Corps in intelligence. And the colonel kept giving him deferments. So after 6 deferments, he had to go.
Now, what year was this when he finally had to go?
He had to go. Well, we were there for 2 years. I worked for the FBI for 2 years, and he had to go. So I decided, instead of staying here, I'm going to go back home. And it just so happened that I got pregnant.
Right before he left?
Right before he left. So while he was gone, I had the baby. I had a little girl. And when he was gone 2 years. She was 2 years old when he came back. So then we promptly got in touch with Washington, D.C. And of course their his headquarters were transferred to Philadelphia. And we went to live in Philadelphia. We took again a furnished room until we found better quarters.
And who was he working for now at this point?
He was working for the government.
For the government.
But then he found out that they no longer needed people. The war was over.
Right.
And his job kind of eased out. And then he went to work for private industry. So he took a job with United Engineers. He was a civil engineer. In the meantime, he was going to Pitt after he graduated from high school, University of Pittsburgh. And then he finished his education when he came out of the service under the GI Bill of Rights. He got his degree at Drexel University.
Wow. first started to talk about your husband and your husband to be, and you met him at the library across from the Klein residence when you were working, and he slowly inched his way over to sit at the same table with you. You said to me, it was love at first sight.
It was.
Tell me about.
Well, I told myself this was the man I'm going to marry.
You could just tell.
When I first saw him, I said, "That's the man I'm going to marry." Before I even talked to him.
Now, how did you know that?
He was just so right for me. He was just tall and handsome, and just built so beautifully. And I knew he was a reader. I knew he was a reader, and so was I. We both loved to read.
So his look and his appearance was something that you knew was right for you. You knew he was a reader, so that was good. What else did you sense about him?
Well, and after we talked together, we found out that we had so many things in common. You know, he came from a large family. His father was out of work for a long time. His mother was an angel. She was a saint. His family was even larger than mine. And he was the second youngest of many children, more than 8, I think. And his sisters were all grown. And he had a brother who was killed. He was a lineman for the telephone company, and he hit a wire. He was working on a wire, and the perspiration from his arm hit a wire. And it just broke his back, and he was killed instantly.
So that love at first sight was such a wonderful thing, and you knew it right away.
I knew it right away, and for him too, it was the same for him.
He felt the same way about you?
He felt the same way about me, yes.
Now, tell me how he proposed. He suggested that you get married.
He did not propose. We just gradually said, we just knew we were going to get married.
That's your phone, but we'll ignore it.
We'll ignore it.
Yeah, you just knew. You just kind of got to the same place at the same time.
We just knew we were going to be married. That's all. He gave me a ring. He gave me a ring, an engagement ring, but there was no proposal. You know, we just knew we would never part.
And what did your parents think of him? Did they love him immediately?
Well, they liked him. Yes, they liked him. Yes, we were different religions, of course.
Was that an issue?
That was an issue.
So he was Protestant.
No, I was Protestant.
You were Protestant,
and he was a Catholic. Yes, it was an issue, and they were a little upset. But in the end, it turned out fine. They loved me. They thought I was the best wife in the world.
Now, did you have to convert at that time to marry him?
Not immediately after the children were born, after my second child was born, just so that the children would not be confused.
And would have one.
I converted, but of course, you can't give up your religion.
Right.
You know, I don't believe in it.
Right.
It made really no difference.
Right.
It was. They were raised. They went to 12 years to Catholic schools, and they went to colleges. Now they're all different. One married a Jewish boy, one married a Methodist. No difference at all. They're all good children.
And they're all good people.
All wonderful children, had a good education, and we were married 68 years when he died.
Wow, that's a wonderful long time. You wished it could have been longer, I'm sure.
It was a good life. It was a good life.
Yes. When you mentioned the education of your children, let's go back and talk about school for you. I knew you graduated from Duquesne High School.
Yes.
Did you go to the public school system?
Public school system.
What were your memories about going through school? What do you remember about that?
I was delighted that I could go to school, and I was delighted that I could graduate. College was out of the question, of course. I did take a course in home economics given by Duquesne University at the high school. You know, they wanted the teenagers to have something to do.
Right.
So I took the course in home economics, sewing and cooking. It was free. It was someplace to go every day for 6 weeks. And I already knew all these things, but it was nice to be with other girls. Yeah. And we had a banquet for the teachers. We cooked everything, and we served it. and they were delighted. It was delicious.
So you loved learning.
Oh, I loved home ec. Yes.
At the time that you were growing up during the Depression and things were so challenging for everyone in your area, did you have any heroes or role models when you were growing up? I know your parents were people that you looked up to. Were there other role models or heroes that you had as you grew up as a child?
Not really. No.
Your
no.
parents provided so much for
Everything.
you.
We had everything, yes.
In
yes.
addition to the Depression, were there any other world events that really impacted you growing up?
Well, no.
The
No.
Depression was huge.
That was everything.
Yep.
And we didn't realize it. We called it the Depression, but, you know, we thought, well, this is the way it is,
Right.
you know.
Right. And you knew it. You just accepted it and dealt with
We
it,
accepted everything.
and knew that eventually it would
We
part.
knew that things would change, and they did, and after they changed, there was a boom, of course.
Right.
And there was plenty of jobs
Right.
then.
Right. You talked about when you met your husband and you fell in love and you knew that you were going to be together. You said to him, "Take me out of Duquesne.
Yes.
I need something more."
Yes.
When you were growing up, did you have any dreams about what you wanted
to
to
go
do?
on a vacation. I wanted to get away. I wanted to go someplace. I wanted to do something, you know. All I did was work.
Right.
Work. After school, it was come home and do diapers, you know.
Right.
Homework was done in an empty room, cold empty room. After the dinner dishes were washed, I would take my books and go up into the living room and study there. And it was never any fun. We never had any real fun. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to know what's happening in the world.
And you wanted to experience it, and you're falling in love with your husband did that to you.
And he was the one too. He had that adventurous spirit
Did he?
also.
So going to Washington and exploring Washington was a huge event for
that
you.
was a turning point in my life. That really was.
And then did that lead to other exploration and other things that you wanted to do?
Oh, absolutely. After we raised our children and they were all gone, we started traveling. And we just traveled. We took 2 vacations every year. And of course I worked. After they were gone, I got a steady job. I made myself a nice career after they were out of the house. I went to work for Elwyn Institute,
that's
Elwyn
won-
Industries.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
What did you do with it for
I
Elwyn?
was a production supervisor in the workshop, and I retired from there.
Wow.
I worked there 14 years.
Oh my goodness.
I earned a little pension, and when I went there to work, you know, I saw all these unfortunate children there, and I was wondering if I'd be able to take this, you know. And I told my husband, well, I'll work a couple of years to save a little money.
Right.
Oh, I couldn't even begin to quit after a couple of years.
You loved it. What drew you to Elwyn? What was there an advertisement in the paper? Did you?
Well, my daughter married a man who worked for Elwyn Industries.
Ah.
And she went to work for Elwyn Industries also. When they met there.
Oh, okay. So you knew about Elwyn, and you knew the type of work.
Yeah, I knew what kind of work it was. It was close to home, close to my home, and of course I was hired on the spot into food service. I was hired into the food service, which came very easily to me. And I had 8 girls, and of course at the same time I was training them.
Oh.
Training them to go into group homes or go into the outside world and find a job. And it was very easy for me, very easy.
What made you most proud with that work at Elwyn? Because you went thinking it was temporary, and you ended up staying for a very long time.
It was so fulfilling.
Was it?
It was so wonderful to be able to help these children. They called me Mommy, Mom.
Oh, they loved you.
Yeah, they loved me so much. They begged to come. Will you take me home with you? Will you take me home with you?
So you became very close to these
Oh,
young people.
absolutely, absolutely. I would bring them home baked cookies, my cookies, and they would come to me for little things. Here's a quarter, would you buy me a card? And the card cost $2, you know.
Yeah.
And I would buy them the card.
You had the same kindness as your mom, didn't
Oh, yes, you can't help but not have it, yes.
you? What lessons did your work at Elwyn teach you?
Oh, again, endurance. Endurance, putting up with all kinds of situations, seizures, you know, tantrums. And at the same time, we had to teach them. We had to keep our cool and handle everything. Keep records.
So all of what you learned in your early life as a child,
That just followed me into
it
my
followed
life.
right there. Not only your knowledge of cooking and all of the skills that went along with that, but the endurance and the perseverance that you learned from your dad and your mom, the kindness from your
and
mom,
patience,
and
patience, patience. Most of all, the patience.
So what your parents taught you, you took right with you.
That was instilled in
Absolutely.
me. Kindness.
Absolutely.
Kindness. A little kindness will go a long way.
Absolutely.
My mother always said.
We're moving in and out of memories and stories of your marriage and your husband and Duquesne, and you described portions of your marriage. What was the best part about being married?
Well, the security part. Having a husband and having 3 children of my very own. Having a house of our own. We bought a house, of course, in a nice neighborhood. And then just raising my children.
And being in love with the man that was their father.
And we had a good marriage.
Yes.
We had a very good marriage.
What did you and your husband do to create such a good marriage? It doesn't just happen. So what did you do to create such a good marriage?
Well, we had very good habits. We home was first, home and family came first. We didn't have much of a social life, just in our own neighborhood, because naturally our parents were 300 miles away in western Pennsylvania, and we were in the east. We went home occasionally to visit to weddings and funerals. And just sticking together and doing the very best, and saving for our children's education, cooking for them, keeping them nice and clean.
You knew what your clear priorities were, didn't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. Raising 3 children was so important to me. They were everything to me.
What advice would you have for young couples? If you were leading a workshop and there were a whole bunch of young couples sitting in front of you, and they knew that you had remarkable wisdom to share with them about marriage and relationships and a strong marriage, what advice would you have for them?
Well, every marriage has ups and downs. And you don't give up when things will go downhill sometimes, but it's so temporary. It depends on your attitude. You just work until things are ironed out, and you just bring things to a proper perspective then.
Now
And you go on. You just endure.
You just go on. And the word endure and perseverance is such a part of your wonderful attitude. You talk about the attitude in a marriage that's most important. What would you describe to young couples about that attitude? There's so much in the world now that is discouraging to young couples, that is negative. How would you describe attitude to a young couple?
Well, it's what's most important. I mean, All the other things are just frills, and some of them are just downright useless, and they could be damaging.
Right.
I want, you know, I have to have this now. It's not important. You get things as you are able to afford them.
Right.
And common sense. And again, sticking to things and the endurance.
Right. So, if I say to you, Irene, what were the most important lessons that you learned from marriage, from the institution of marriage? What were the most important lessons that you learned?
Well, I remembered my wedding vows, for better or for worse. And if something would go wrong, I'd make light of it. I guess this is the worst, and it's not that bad after all.
So you had a great sense of humor.
I did. You had to.
And if your husband was still alive today, and I asked him what lessons did he learn from marriage, how do you think he would respond to that?
Well, he always told me, "You're the joy of my life." And he always said he found the right girl.
He was so in love with you.
Yeah, and I asked him many times, "Did you think before you married me? Did you think twice?" He said, "Oh, I did. I thought lots." And he said, "I knew what I was doing."
Yeah. To live 68 years with a man who loved you from the moment he met you is so wonderful. I'm sure you've thought about that.
I did, and I took care of him until the day before he died. One day before he died, they took him to hospice, and because I swore that he would die at home, but I was at the point of collapse, and I couldn't do it anymore. So he died a day and a half after they took him to hospice.
I'm sure you did everything you could.
And I was right there holding his hand.
Yeah.
My children were there too.
How lucky for you to have had a man to love and love you for that many years.
And we mourned together. We mourned for 2 years together. We went through our whole life together. We talked about our life. We sat there for hours and talked and cried together.
Because he was sick enough that you knew?
He was terminal.
So you knew.
And we both knew it. He accepted it graciously. And he said, he gave me some advice. Be careful how you spend your money, because I think you're going to live long enough that you will go into a retirement home. And he was so right. He said, you will need money. So, after he died, it was over. I couldn't even cry.
What was that like?
It was a relief. It was blessed relief. Because he didn't suffer. I couldn't stand the suffering.
And you were witness to that.
Oh, every minute. I sat there and watched him sleep. For hours I would sit right next to his bed and watch him sleep. I talked to him while he was sleeping. I wanted him to know that I was there.
And that you were right next to him. What a beautiful story of love. What a beautiful story of love. To hear it, I am touched and inspired.
Well, it was a good life. I had a good marriage. It was a nice life. And we traveled. We went to his beloved West. When he was in the service, he was at the Air Force Academy, and he wanted me to see Colorado. So he took 2 little girls, and we drove out. We went to Grand Canyon. We went everywhere, all over the West. We went to Cancun. We went to Prince Edward Island. We went to Washington State. We covered all 4 corners. And I got my wish. I wanted to get out.
And you traveled.
Saw the world. And what a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience that was.
Tell me what that taught you. What did traveling to different places and seeing what? Tell me about that experience.
Well, I couldn't get over the beauty of the West, the vastness, and how wonderful and kind and humane the people were out west. And then when we went down to Florida, I couldn't get over the wealth, you know, and the leisure and the beautiful clothes and everybody. It's so broadening.
Yes.
It truly is broadening. And we just came back feeling wonderful from a vacation. We have boxes and boxes of pictures in my daughter's basement of our travels.
So you started to travel after the children,
After the children.
and you said you took two trips a year.
We wanted them to see the world too.
Were you
Like
able to do that?
We took our son to New York and to West Point, you know, things that little boys like.
Yeah.
We took him to Mama Leone's for a steak dinner and took him to see The Big Country, that movie, The Big Country.
Ah.
And then we spent a day at West Point. We went to the seashore for a week, and he loved the water and the sand. And he still loves the ocean. As a result of it, they go every weekend,
Wow.
he and his wife.
Was there any one or two places that you hold in your memory most strongly as places that had the most impact on you?
Oh,
Or did you love, I know you loved them all, but were there any that really,
the Grand Canyon.
the Grand Canyon?
The Great Tetons and the Grand Canyon. That is a wonder of the world.
Awesome.
It is really a wonder. You could just sit there and not say one word and be at peace.
Yeah.
And you could just sit there all day, and everything is different every minute. You look around and everything changes every minute.
As the sun moves and shifts.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
It's a remarkable piece of nature.
yes, yes.
So you love travel. What was your last trip that you
Our last trip was to Niagara Falls,
Ah.
a 3-day trip to Niagara Falls, and we were already in our late 80s when we went. We had to get one more vacation.
How old was your husband when he died?
He was 89.
89. Now you referenced 3 children. Your first child was
A girl.
Your second
Second
child was a girl, and then a boy. So what were your children's names?
Michelle, do you want her age?
Yeah. How about,
71.
okay.
Nancy, 68.
Mm-hmm.
And James, 62.
So tell me about them. You said raising 3 children was so important to you. Tell me about your
Well,
children.
the girls were darling. They were just good girls. They were good students. And Michelle went on to the University of Maryland. And she never came back after graduating. She met her love of her life there. And they were married and lived in the Washington, D.C. area. Nancy decided she wanted to enter the convent right out of high school. So she did. And again, we cried together. We went into the closet the night before she died, and my husband and I cried together, but we thought, well, let's give her wings. Let her try it. If it's not for her, she'll come back.
So she went in right after high school.
Right after high school.
What order did she go into?
Our Lady of Angels. And she was too constricted there. I knew she wouldn't stay because she was another one that wanted to do things and see the world.
But at that time, she thought it was the
But
right.
at that time, she thought
it was
the
the right-
world was too much. She said, I want peace. But she had it for 2 months and decided that it wasn't for her. So immediately she went to Elwyn, got a job at Elwyn, met her husband there, husband to be there. 2 years later, they were married. And she's my rock now.
She is.
She's the one that handles everything for me.
Are both of the girls live locally?
They do. Michelle moved back here. She lived in Georgia. She would work for Delta Airlines. And she retired from Delta Airlines. And she stayed in Georgia. But when her father got sick, she decided in the meantime, her husband died.
Mm.
She decided she wanted to come closer to her father.
Mm-hmm.
So she bought a little house in West Grove, a beautiful little house
Mm-hmm.
in West Grove. And she's still there now. Yeah.
And Nancy's close by too?
Nancy is in Chatsford,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And
And
how-
my son is in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all around me. I'm in a circle. I'm in a center, and they circle
Ah,
me.
that's wonderful. Now, did James stay here?
James was always here. He loved Springfield. It was close to Morton, where we had our first house. He made his boyhood friends there, and he still has his friends there that he went to school with.
Mm-hmm.
And he loves this big old 100-year-old house.
Ah. And so what is he doing now? What is James?
He works for a spa outfit. He sells spas and pool tables and swimming pools.
That's a great industry.
Well, this is his slow time, but he's busy in the
Yeah, I'm
summer.
sure. What makes you proudest about your children? You have 3 wonderful children. They live close by. What makes you proudest about
They're
them?
very loyal. They're very loyal to me, and I feel they love me very
Oh,
much.
I'm sure they do.
They tell me what a good mother I was.
Yeah,
They'll do anything for me.
I'm sure.
They learned a lot from me. My girls are excellent cooks. They learned that from me.
What other ways do you think you influence them? I am sure you influence them so much.
Well, they're a lot like me,
Are
I
they?
think. They're educated. My one daughter has a PhD in administrative management.
Mhm. Is
the
that
younger daughter,
Nancy?
Nancy,
Mhm.
yes. And Michelle, of course, went to graduate school, and she had a wonderful career with the airline. She had many jobs, but the airline was her latest, and good thing because she come out with beautiful benefits from the Air Delta Airlines.
Benefits are very helpful these
Very,
days.
very, very nice.
So they're like you.
They are. They look like me. Yes.
Do they have the same wonderful attitude that you have?
They do. They're better. They're even better.
So
Yeah.
that thread that started with your parents and probably started before your parents
Oh, yes.
has just woven through all
It
of you.
has.
What
It
a
has.
wonderful legacy that is just continuing
Yes.
to go through your family. Now, does Michelle have children?
Michelle had 2 children.
And how about Nancy?
Nancy has 2 boys, and Jim has 2 children.
So there are 6 grandchildren.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, you said that they influence you because one of the ways they influence you is they love you very much. They're very loyal. They tell you how much they love you. They tell you what a good
indeed.
mom you were. So you know how important
Well, it's what they do that tells me that they
Yeah.
love me. It's what they do for me.
Right.
They visit me. They want to bring me food.
Ah.
I beg them, please don't bring me food. Barclay has good food.
But they bring it.
But so they bring me things, the things that I need.
Now, you know you influence them. I'm sure. How do you think you influence them the most? If you had to pick 1 or 2 things that you feel really influence them, that they're taking on into their life, what do you think?
Well,
that
if
is?
they ever had a problem, I would gather them close to me and we'd talk about it, you know. It's not so bad. This too shall pass, you know.
This won't last forever.
That's not a problem,
It
really,
won't last
I would
forever.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's do what can we do to help?
Yeah.
Well, how can we fix it?
Yeah.
And sure enough, they do that to me now.
Yeah.
They use the same technique on me.
Yeah.
If I think I have a problem, well, Mom, what can we do to help?
Right. And I'm sure they use that same
Absolutely.
with their children. So
Absolutely.
again, we have this wonderful
they have
thread.
wonderful, wonderful children. And I have 7 grandchildren and 11 great-grandchildren.
11 great-grandchildren.
Yes, yes. They're all beautiful,
7 grandchildren.
intelligent children.
Wow. 7 grandchildren and 11
Yeah,
great-grandchildren.
a lot. At Christmas time, it's a little, it's fun.
Now, do they come here or do you go to one of
no,
their
they
houses?
come here. I used to go there, but it's too much for
It's
me
too hard.
now.
So they come
Because
here.
I would have to stay overnight, you know.
So you would have 18 grandchildren, great-grandchildren
Yeah.
here at one time?
Yeah, fortunately we don't get together all at once. We get together family by family. The great-grandchildren come as a family with their parents, and my children come by themselves. I want contact with each of them separately, because that's the way we could have the best visits.
What has it meant to you to be a grandparent to 18 grandchildren, great grandchildren?
Wow. Well, the family's getting bigger and bigger. The pies are getting cut in smaller
pieces. But I know they don't come at all one time,
Yeah.
but when you, in your quiet moments, think about that, describe how that feels to that.
Well, it makes me feel wonderful because my daughters were such wonderful mothers.
Mm-hmm.
They were educated, and they were patient. They did things with their children. They saw to it that they had a good education. And I'm so proud of my daughters. They were the key to everything.
And your son, I'm sure.
My son's boys are out of college. They have no college debt.
Wow.
He took care of that.
Wow.
They gave up a lot, but they're out of college. My one grandson is teaching in Thailand. He's in Thailand. He's teaching at a private international school, teaching students English and different things. Loves it.
So James really took on many of the characteristics of your husband.
He won't admit it.
Aw.
Because my husband was very strict, you know. And he won't admit it. Sometimes they clashed, like father and son will.
Sure.
But he admits that Dad was a good dad. Dad was smart, he'll say. Dad was real smart.
Yeah.
So he's trying to be like his father.
So you're proud of your grandchildren?
I'm extremely proud of them. They are gorgeous, beautiful.
You are so fortunate to have such a wonderful family that is coming after you and forging their way.
Well, I think my life is just taken on, everything, step by step, has gone in the right direction all the time. I don't think I ever made a bad decision.
What do you contribute that to?
Good judgment, sensibility. I mean, can't make a mistake. If you do, it's going to be costly. We thought about things. We had 5 houses. And they were all new, and each time we moved, we made a better step, a better step. And now, from one room, started in one room, I'm ending in one room. My life in
the circles of life, huh?
That's the circle.
Circles of life.
That's the circle.
So the good judgment and the wise thinking and the planning. And you said that life was up and down. There were difficult times and good times. How did you maintain such a strong, focused yet calm approach to problem solving?
Well, this is normal. This is what happens to everybody. Life has its ups and downs.
That's right.
I mean, it just can't always be beautiful.
Right.
And it's not forever.
Right.
Things do change. It depends on your attitude.
Right. So attitude was key for you.
Attitude is everything. Attitude is everything. You could be down and out, and at the same time, you could find joy in something. I would always go out and help somebody. If I was down and out, and I had a little problem, I would bake a cake and I would go visit somebody. And that made me feel wonderful.
That is so simple and yet so powerful.
Nothing.
Right.
And immediately, as I was baking that cake, I could just see my everything rising. Attitude. Everything.
Because you transformed your discomfort and pain into something positive for someone else.
Don't complain. Go out and do something good.
What an incredible life lesson.
Yes.
You talked about the religious aspect of your life and that you were Protestant when you married your husband, and that after the children were born and you were raising them, then you converted to Catholicism.
Yes.
how strong has religion been to you as an individual growing up?
To me, it was very strong.
Tell
to
me about that.
Well, we were, you know, if you're a Lutheran, you're usually a pretty staunch Lutheran, you know. And my religion was everything. It taught goodness, charity, kindness, getting along with people. It was everything, and I thought I was giving something up. Finally, a priest set me straight. He says, "You didn't give up your religion," he said.
You thought you were giving up Lutheranism.
I thought I was giving up my religion. He says, "You didn't give your religion up." So that made me think, of course I didn't. If you're born into something, you can't change that. You remember that. So I kind of combined the two.
And you said to me earlier that your children, one of your children married a Jewish individual, etc.,
Yeah.
and that you said to me it doesn't really matter the name of the religion.
No.
So talk more about that.
Well, he was a good man.
It's about goodness.
He was a very good person, and he loved my daughter, and they loved each other, and they were good together, and they had similar interests. They went to the same college. They lived in the same area, and when he would come up to visit us, they would come up to visit us. I could see how close they were and how happy they were.
Yeah.
And I told my husband, "Don't feel bad. Let them get married. They're going to get married anyway, like we did.
Right.
Let them get married." And he agreed.
So you were very able to sort through what some people get hung up on. Some people think that it's only one religious path. That's the only way. You know it as a source of goodness, and it doesn't really matter what the religion is.
Absolutely. It's we're all one. We have one God. No, it's just we all want the same thing for our families.
That's right. That's right.
We all want to be good. We don't want to be bad.
Right.
We all want to be kind and good.
What would you say is the most profound or significant spiritual moment of your life?
Spiritual?
Yeah, what was a very significant, profound spiritual moment for you sometime in your life? And it could be something very tiny. Does anything come to mind?
Oh, there were many, I guess. There were many. I just feel very lucky that I overcame, that when I look back upon it, I thought this was what I always wanted, and I'm going to work for it. And I worked for it, and I got it. And my girls did the same thing. They worked for everything they ever had. They put themselves through graduate school. My daughter got her PhD after she was married. Paid for it herself. Went away. Oh, that was well, you're a PhD. You know what that was.
Yeah.
And the whole family was affected when she was studying for that PhD.
Yeah.
She went away for weeks at a time.
Sure.
And we had to help them, you know, invite them for meals.
Yeah.
And kind of look after them. Of course, everybody was grown up.
And your son, I'm sure, persevered and went in whatever direction he did for his
My
life.
son was a free spirit. He was a child of the 60s. And he played guitar.
Yeah.
And he wore the long hair.
And I understand that. That's when I was in high school, was the 60s.
And I thought, let him go.
That's
no
right.
matter what I do, that he will not settle down. And he's still happy.
Yeah.
He lives in this big old house that they're restoring now, little by little.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to move because that was his childhood home.
Yeah.
He grew up in that area, Morton, Springfield.
Yeah.
And he loves his wife. They have a good marriage. And they raise their boys beautifully, just like I did. And we just are, sometimes we talk and we say, we are so lucky.
Yeah.
Our family is so lucky.
Yeah. And having the attitude of a free spirit brings you so much. You're just so open to so much in the world when you have that attitude.
Well, you are. You have to be.
Yeah.
There's so much to see and learn.
Yeah, and so schooling and education is a path for some people, and free spirit is a path for other
Absolutely.
people. And it's how you embrace life regardless of what path you take.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So your children have followed in your footsteps with that.
I think they have. Yeah, and they all like to go. They all like to travel. Every one of them.
Do you have a favorite prayer? Is there any prayer
Saint
that...
Francis of Assisi. Yes.
I'm an instrument of your peace.
I'm an instrument
Yeah.
of peace.
That was my mother's favorite prayer.
Yes,
I love that prayer.
I have it on my mirror.
Yeah.
I say it every morning when I'm putting on my makeup.
Yeah. And knowing you for the amount of time that I know, I can see that you embody that prayer. That's an incredible work of guidance, I think, that prayer.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
We are, well, let's see, there's one other question I want to ask you before we break for lunch. What are your main activities right now?
Right now, I like anything that has, I love reading.
Mm-hmm.
I love to read.
Do you love certain kinds of books?
Nonfiction.
Nonfiction.
I cannot read fiction.
You like nonfiction?
I refuse to waste my eyes on fiction. I like to read biographies. I like to read. Right now, I'm reading Angela's Ashes and a book on a wonderful book on the girl that founded the White Dog Cafe in Philadelphia.
Oh yes, she's a social activist.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
She's an incredible
I
human
enjoyed
being.
that very much.
Yeah, she's a
And I
wonderful.
just finished the book on the racehorse Seabiscuit.
Oh yeah, that's
and
great.
Unknown. I read Unknown. You know, anything with adventure. I love anything with adventure.
And nonfiction. When did you choose to go away from nonfiction toward?
Never read nonfiction.
Never nonfiction.
I thought.
Why bother? Yeah,
No,
there's so much.
No, it's nothing. It's just a bunch of words.
So
you know.
you're inspired by your reading.
I am, and I like to work with words. If you'll notice in the living room, we have a word on a board. They put a long word out, and you have to get as many small word, 4-letter words or more as you can out of that word. And we always fill the board.
Wow.
200 or more
Wow.
words out of a word we can get. So I like to, it's good brain work.
It is good brain work, and your brain is incredible.
I have a wonderful memory. I have total recall.
You do have total recall. You're an inspiration to me. Your brain is so sharp.
I have total recall since when I was 3 years old.
Wow. We have covered just about all of your life so far.
You have.
Yeah. And
You
so
have.
what I'd like to do is, how about we take a lunch break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up.
Wonderful.
Would that be good?
That's
okay.
great.
Thank you.
All right.
We're going to start back up this afternoon, and we're going to go into different type questions that will tap even further into who you are at your core and the wonderful wisdom and knowledge and positive attitude that you have. So I'm going to start out by saying, how old are you now?
I'm 96.
96. So what's it like being 96 years old? What's that experience like?
Well, it's wonderful if you're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
That helps.
Mm-hmm.
If you can walk and if you can read, and if you're still interested in things, which I am. And it's wonderful to see your great-grandchildren
Oh, yes.
growing up to be adults.
Yeah.
That's a real thrill.
And you've experienced so many things.
Yes, I have.
There's been so many changes in the world.
I have, and so rapidly.
Oh, yes. Did the years go by quickly?
They are now. They're. It seems like they're flying now.
Mm-hmm.
I think as I get older, the weeks just fly by.
They fly by.
Yes.
It's hard to believe that another year has gone by.
It is.
So you're really understanding firsthand the whole value of cherishing every day.
Yeah, I do.
You do?
I do.
What is your attitude toward aging and old age? How would you describe your attitude toward it?
Well, I think it's great. I mean, good or bad, I'm glad I'm alive, you know. Whether the changes are good or whether they're
Right.
bad, it's nice to experience different things. And
Right.
I'm anxious to see how my grandchildren will progress and
Mhm.
how their lives are going to go. And it appears that my children are well settled and happy,
Mhm.
and that makes me very happy.
Mhm.
And I'm glad that I'm here to see all of this.
Yeah, and to experience it all
Yes.
and see the fruits of your labors.
Yes. Yes.
What's Irene, what's the best thing about growing older?
The best thing about growing, well, you don't have as many responsibilities.
Mhm.
Life is sweeter.
Mhm.
It's a little more relaxed.
Mhm.
You can look back
Mhm.
and you could see what other people are doing and still be able to enjoy life.
Mhm. Now, when you say life is sweeter, what do you mean by that wonderful word?
Well, you don't have the pressures.
Mhm.
You don't have the pressures of small children and worry about college and well, you do worry about your children, and to a certain extent, I still do.
Mhm.
But life has just gotten much more calmer for
But
me
it's
now.
softer and gentler.
It's gentle,
Yeah.
and I'm happy. I'm very content at Barclay.
Mhm.
I'm lucky to have found Barclay,
Mhm.
and
It feels really nice here. It just feels very warm and loving and
it
comfortable
is.
here.
It's just like home.
Yeah.
It's a good home.
Yeah. What's the most, the hardest thing about growing older? I mean, obviously, you said if a person wouldn't be healthy, that would be challenging. But
Yeah.
in your mind, what's the most challenging part about growing older?
Well, when you're really old like I am, and I consider myself old, you can't do what you could always do. You can't go out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, it's hard for me to go out to dinner.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to get in and out of a car.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very fatigued when I go out, even for a short jaunt.
Mm-hmm.
Some trips are necessary,
Mm-hmm.
and I look forward to going out, but then I'm just so tired when I
Yeah.
return. Always glad to be back in my room at Barclay.
Yeah. So you have to adjust where you
You
find.
have to, absolutely you have to adjust, and it's not hard. It's very tolerable.
Mm-hmm. The words that were used to describe you to me were, you're described as vibrant, energetic, active, fully alive. That's how people describe you. What have you done to maintain that attitude at the age of 96 years old?
Always trying to learn something constructive and new.
Something new?
Always trying to learn to crochet at the age of 92 when I went to live with my daughter. I want to be useful.
Mm-hmm.
Even here, if I can help another resident,
Mm-hmm.
if I can direct them to the proper floor or be of any use, it makes me feel very happy.
Very valued.
I don't like to waste my time.
Mm-hmm.
I like to make very good use of my time.
Mm-hmm. And so all of those attitudes and all of those actions contribute to you being the vibrant woman that you are.
I think so.
Yeah.
They make me fulfilled and happy.
Mm-hmm.
If I have nothing to do, I find something to do.
Mm-hmm.
I will make a telephone call. I will do anything to keep busy, to keep occupied.
Mm-hmm. And I get the sense it's meaningful occupation
Because,
with you.
yes, it is meaningful. My mother always said, you should never sit with empty hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I always remembered that.
Mm-hmm. What things are most important to you now?
Well, most important is my well-being, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be healthy if I'm going to grow old. Of course, none of us, we all have to have our problems as we age. But I think just feeling fit, eating right, just living cleanly
Mm-hmm.
and keeping in contact with my children.
Now, when you say living cleanly, I think I know what you mean by that. But what do you mean by those words, living cleanly?
Well, eating well, not doing anything to excess,
Mm-hmm.
getting my rest,
Mm-hmm.
and being good to people. That's included in living
Mm-hmm.
cleanly to me.
How if women or men who were, say, 20 years younger than you are, in their 70s or 60s or maybe close to 80, would say to you, Irene, how do I prepare for old age? What would you say to them?
You have to plan. You have to have a goal.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make sure that you are financially stable,
Mm-hmm.
and that should start early in your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, of course, exercise, be fit,
Mm-hmm.
and most of all, eat properly.
Mm-hmm. And
I
take
think.
really good care of
And
yourself.
always be interested in new things.
That's key,
Be
isn't it?
curious, investigate, learn new things every day.
Mm-hmm.
I like to do something constructive every day in my life. Something constructive and good.
Mm-hmm. So that's a goal when you wake up in the morning, is to do something.
What can I do today,
What can I do
to
today?
make my day a good day?
Wow, that's a great message to live by. What do you look forward to at this stage of your life?
Just waking up in the morning and looking out the window and seeing the trees and the sunshine and be grateful that I'm alive.
Grateful that
And
you
I
have
hope
another
for
day.
another year, one more year,
Yeah.
one more
more
year,
year,
one more year. And I usually get my wish.
Irene, what do you feel have been the most important successes in your life?
Well, at the age of 55, I went to work and I created a nice career for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something, without a college education, I didn't think that would ever happen to
Wow.
me. And I retired with respect, good graces,
Mm-hmm.
and happily.
Mm-hmm. That was a great thing that you did at that time.
It was a wonderful thing.
What would you say are the biggest milestones in your life? When you go back to the time that you were little and look back over your life, what were the most significant or biggest milestones?
Well, I never dreamed that I would ever drive a car.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned how to drive at the age of 33, and I drove for 39 years. I gave my car up at the age of, when I retired,
Mm-hmm.
I stopped driving. I
Mhm.
didn't have to drive. So we had two cars. My son was a lucky recipient of my Oldsmobile,
Mm-hmm.
and we just had the one car. And that to me was wonderful. I was able to do things for myself, drive my children here and there, and be able to find a job that required transportation.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big milestone.
Mm-hmm.
Watching my daughter get her PhD was a wonderful thing. Watching my grandson fly to Thailand and establish a life there.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing my children and grandchildren so successful.
Mm-hmm.
And most of all, my oldest daughter, she has a wonderful life now. She's educated. She always held good jobs. She was a wonderful mother, adopted a child, adopted many children, raised many.
Mm-hmm.
She worked for Planned Parenthood at one time. And she had a wonderful life also. And they both do. All my children do.
Mm-hmm. All three of them are
All three of them.
successful, and they all had different paths to get that way,
Absolutely. Yes, they're all different. Each
but all
one of them is
independent.
totally different.
Yeah. If you could ask God one question, what would it be?
One question.
Mm-hmm.
What would I ask God? God, did I make a change in somebody's life? Was I a good mother? Was I a good wife?
What do you think he'd say?
I think he would say you tried hard.
You gave it your all.
You gave it your all.
Yeah. You know you were a good mom. You have your children that tell you that on a regular basis, what a good mother you were.
Yes.
And I imagine that every day you touch someone's life. When I left here at lunchtime, I was, and continue to be the longer I talked to you, I was so impressed with who you are as a human being and who you are as a woman. And just listening to you, how your stories have impacted me. And even Kevin, who's out in the hall, can hear a little bit of your stories. And he was so impressed with the messages he took from you that he has inside of him now. I'll bet you touch people like that every single day, Irene.
I hope I do.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
I hope I do.
What words do you turn to for comfort?
Prayer.
Prayer?
Every day. My Heavenly Father.
And what do you ask God for every day?
What do I ask for? Peace.
Peace.
I'd like to see peace. I would love to see the wars end.
Yeah.
I would like to see everybody happy. All this discord in the world. I would, for once, like to pick up a newspaper and read something positive instead of sad news. That's what makes me sad.
Is to see the condition
The
of the world.
suffering in
Yes.
this world, the hunger, and the suffering that the impoverished nations still endure.
Yeah. What's your secret strength? What is
I think it's patience and
Patience.
endurance. Just keep going. Just keep trying. It'll be better tomorrow.
And that has been a thread that you have had
all
since
through
you
my
were,
life. Never
that you
give
got
up.
from your mom and dad.
Never give up. Just
give
keep
up.
trying.
What a wonderful piece, what a wonderful part of your legacy that is patience and endurance. Just keep on going.
That's
Just
right.
keep on going.
You have to. You can't give up.
Right. I'm gonna say 3 sentences to you, and one at a time, and I'd like you to finish the sentences. I am grateful for
Everything that I have in my life. I feel that I worked for it, and I feel that I should enjoy the results right now.
And you are.
I am.
Here's another one. Happiness is
Just taking life every day as it comes.
noticing the trees and the sky and the morning, and
Yes, every day.
and your heart is filled by that every morning.
Yes,
I think.
Yeah, I love nature. I love the trees. I always loved gardening. Always loved being a homemaker. And I could do other things at the same time.
So in addition to the patience and the endurance and the perseverance that you've carried with you that has guided you your whole life, I get the sense that gratitude has also been a part.
That's very important.
You see something to be grateful for everywhere.
I do. Gratitude is extremely important. You cannot take things for granted.
Right. Here's a third sentence. Love is
just put another O in God. Being good.
being kind.
Being kind, helpful, understanding. And just being content with your lot in life.
What absolutely delights you? What makes your eyes twinkle? What makes your heart sing? What absolutely delights you?
Well, when one of my grandchildren come over as a family and they walk through that door and those kids fly over to me and give me a hug, that's a delight to me.
I bet that is.
That's a delight to me. Although I didn't have play a great big part in raising them. Their parents were wonderful parents, but I love seeing them progress. They're all brilliant, and that makes me happy that I'm leaving that behind.
Yeah. What a wonderful gift. What lifts your spirit?
I think hope.
Mm-hmm.
Hopeful, being hopeful. Never give up hope.
Mm-hmm.
There's always, always, always something good that will happen.
And the message that you stated many times before, this won't last forever. This negative piece will be over. It will get better.
Yeah.
So you, that whole message of hope is at your core.
Oh, it is. It is my core, yes.
What do you know now that you wished you'd known when you were young?
Well, I wish I had applied myself more. I wish that I'd have been able to continue my education. But on the other hand, I think life is a good school teacher. I think living long and experiencing different things, that in itself is an education.
You created a life that was an education for you.
I have learned from my children. I have learned a lot from my children. My brilliant children.
What's your best piece of advice for living, Irene?
Just try hard every day. Just try hard.
Give it your all.
Apply yourself and do your best. Get up in the morning and say, today I'm going to do the best I can.
If a young person came to you, one of your grandchildren or great-grandchildren, and said to you, Grandma, what's the most important thing for living a good life? What would you tell them?
They have come to me. They have called me a very wise grandmother. And I always just say, try to get along with everybody, be on good terms with everybody, never hold a grudge, and do your best, do your absolute best.
And think of the impact that you're having with them in their life and how they're taking that message and applying it in their families, in their relationships, in their work. It just keeps on going.
Well, I'd like to think that I was at least partially responsible.
And the fact that they're even asking you for your advice and then absorbing it, your attitude just will live through all of them, no matter what they do. I think that in itself is a miracle. That's pretty remarkable to think the thread that came through you and now it will continue through them.
Well, I would like to think that it did. I don't know if everybody else would agree, but I hope that it did. This is the feeling that I wanted to convey and impart.
Yeah. If you had the power to solve one and only one problem in the world, what would it be?
Hunger.
Hunger.
I would feed everybody.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you?
I would just feed everybody.
And of all the problems you could have chosen, what drew you to that one? Why did you pick that one?
Well, because it's so prevalent. And I remember when we were growing up, we didn't have any luxuries to eat. We had just plain, nourishing food. And we were never hungry. We were never hungry. We helped hungry people. And then the longer I lived, the more I found out that there is a lot of hunger in this world. And it persists. And people can be helped. We have the means to help people.
We do. When you think of your life's purpose, what kind of things come to mind? Why do you think God placed you on this earth?
Well, I think God put me on this earth to be useful, helpful, and to just do the best that I possibly can in every phase of my life.
And how would you like to be remembered? When people think of you, How would you like to be remembered?
Well, as being a good person. My grandmother was good. My mother was a good person, because that's how I remember my parents. They were good parents.
And you'd like to be remembered the same
I
way?
do.
I think there is no doubt that will be
Yes.
the case. And what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to leave behind for others to hold on to?
Well, I would like for them to remember the good things that I did, and I would like to be remembered. I want them to mention my name, talk about me like I talk about my dear parents. I want to live forever in their memories.
And what 3 values would you like to pass on to your children and grandchildren?
Honesty, perseverance, and hard work. I think hard work is important. It never killed anybody. Hard work is wonderful. And I think they're doing a pretty good job.
What lesson has it taken you the longest to learn? Has there been any lesson that it's taken you a long time to learn, or the longest to learn?
Just accept life as it is. Don't try to fight it. Don't knock it. This is my life.
Just accept it.
And I'm going to do the best I can. And that took me a long time. And I finally resigned myself. This is what it is. I'm in a retirement home. I am determined to end my life here happily.
What a great realization to come to is acceptance,
Yes.
isn't
Yes.
it? It's really a gift.
Yes.
What are your hopes and dreams for your children and grandchildren?
Oh, I want them to have a better life than I did. And I think they will, because they will have the definite better education they'll have. And they're exposed to so many
much,
things.
yeah.
Their parents take them everywhere. They let them learn, they let them go, and they let them do what they want to do, under supervision, of course. And they teach them so much, and they're all bright, healthy children.
So you'd like them to continue with the legacy that you started when you said, I want to leave Duquesne and I want to travel and see the world. You want them to even broaden that, experiences,
Absolutely, let
travel,
them do their thing.
and learn and be exposed to many
Let them
things.
do what they want to do. Yes, they do.
And you knew what you wanted to do.
I knew what I wanted to do, because parents die, and then you're on your own, and you have to learn while they're living to know how to live while they're living.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to live.
I've asked you so many questions, I know that, and you've done beautifully, and I couldn't have dreamed for a more profound, warm and loving interview. Your answers have just warmed my heart. And so my question to you is there any question you wished I had asked but didn't?
I think you covered everything.
I did cover
You
it.
absolutely
And
did.
you covered everything. Now, you know that your family is going to get a copy of the DVD, as are you. And so, you know, your children are going to see it, your grandchildren are going to see it, your great-grandchildren are going to see it. You've shared so many heartfelt messages and attitude with them. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with them? As we close.
Well, I'd like to tell them that I love them all. And I tell each one of them when we part, always be good. Always be good.
Always be good. And how much you love them.
Yes.
And that will always be.
Well, that's the first thing I tell them when they come. I love you so much when I hug them.
So that's your most important
It
message.
is. Love is so important.
Yeah.
It's nice to be loved.
Yeah. And it's nice to give love.
Yes, it
And
is. It's better to give love.
And you have experienced that from the time you were little all the way through your life.
Yes.
There hasn't been a time where you haven't had that experience.
Well, we didn't actually. My mother was so busy that she didn't have time to give us individual attention. It was just every man for himself. You better do the best you can or else you're on your own.
Yeah.
And we knew better.
Yeah.
We did the best we could. And we got along very well. I have 2 brothers left out of there's 3 of us left after all that large family. And we're still very close.
Wow. You're
Very
lucky.
close.
You're so lucky.
Yes.
We're done with this time.
Thank you.
But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It was a pleasure.
It was, and I have to tell you, and I mean this from my bottom of my heart. I will carry your messages with me forever. It was an absolute pleasure meeting you, interacting with you, and hearing your stories. You are a gift. You're a gift to everyone who comes in contact with you.
That's so nice to hear.
At lunchtime when I went down and I saw the young woman that brought us up, Lauren, and then Sarah Mattis, we saw Sarah Mattis, and I told them what an incredible experience this was. They said, we are so grateful that she is here. She is such a gift to this community.
Oh, that's so wonderful to hear.
So thank you. I will never forget you.
How wonderful.
And next time I'm here, I will try to stop in and visit with you.
Thank you very much.
So-
I will be happy to see you.
So thank you very, very much. It was a wonderful time spent with you. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.